We're going to hit a touchy subject today, amps versus modelers. I keep some pretty decent records, and I looked back through my stuff. I haven't used a mic'd up amp live since 2020, August of 2020. Actually, I haven't mic'd up an amp, period, since August of 2020. I have been using the Iridium pretty much since the day it came out. As soon as I saw them online here on YouTube, I ended up ordering one, quickly turned around and ordered 3 of them after I had gotten that one in. It just solves too many problems. I still have tube amps. I love tube amps. I have sold my Vox a few years ago to my good friend David. I still have my Blues Jr. Tweed anniversary amp. I love it. I still remember seeing Switchfoot using an orange amp back in the 90s with the beautiful Letdown. I loved the sound of that album. I remember researching, and the only dealer of orange in the Mid-South at that time was Xanadu Music. I remember going over there. I had to order the 8015 from him. It had to come over from Europe. Took a month. And I remember before I even took possession of that amp, he had already had multiple people make offers on it there when it was sitting in his store. I still use those amps. The Fender is actually still at school, and I end up using it as a educational tool to show my students at school all about amps and how they work. The orange is here in the studio right over next to me, and I still love plugging pedals into it, and I love the sound of that amp just right by your head. But they don't make sense in a live setting anymore for multiple reasons. We all use in-ear monitors. All the gigs that I play now and all the gigs that I've been playing have been using in-ear monitors for years. So you don't get that response of the amp moving air right next to your head or right next to you on stage like you used to. Obviously, sound engineers love controlling the environment of the room without having live amps in them. We don't have space for amps off stage. Been down that road before too, leaving amps on afterwards, running all night. I don't miss any of that. And honestly, the Iridium and the new modelers are just too amazing. They've come a very, very long way. The first amp modeler I ever tried was the Line Pod back in the late 90s. It had to have been 99. I think the Pod came out in 97, 98. Had to have been 99, 2000 when I tried a Pod out. I didn't like it at all. It did not feel anything like the tube amp to me. When I got in my dorm room, I was actually, a few years later, producing the Show and Tell album, that album was a massive undertaking and feat for me because I was using an 8-track digital recorder at the time, and I was bouncing, and doing so much of the production in a dorm room environment where everything had to be done with headphones. So I had picked up a Korg Toneworks, which is a really popular little, I don't even think they necessarily called it a modeler. I think it was more of a pocket battery-operated effects, multi-effects processor or something that they called it. A lot of the guitar tones actually on Show and Tell came from that Korg Toneworks. As soon as I was done with the album, I sold the processor. I didn't even really have any use for it outside of producing that album, which that album was an undertaking for sure. You listen back at the album now, it's fine, but it's so much of it, the guitar work was covered up by so many layers of different sounds. That album's definitely the definition of overproduced. Other than that, those are the only two times I had tried modelers before the Iridium came out. I started seeing the Kempers being used on stage. I remember going to a Toby Mac concert and saw Britt Nicole, and I saw her guitar player using a Kemper, and I was like, man, there must be something to these Kempers. I had not had the opportunity to play on the Kemper. They're amazing. They sound great. They certainly, I think, jump-started this whole idea that impulse responses can sound like a real amp in the room. The Iridium comes on the scene soon after, and what the Iridium offered guitar players like myself would have been the opportunity to have that amazing impulse response at a very affordable price. Let's just face it, the Kemper is out of the budget for many people. I think for people who are not guitar players, it's really hard to explain that spark, that feeling that you get when you hear a tube amp hit you in the face. I never got that feeling until I actually got the opportunity to play with an Iridium right there at my fingertips. When you put the headphones on or listen through just a regular speaker, to hear how dead-on accurate it feels to the response of your fingers and your pick hitting the strings, it's absolutely astounding. And I don't know that a non-musician or somebody who doesn't play guitar can really fully appreciate that feeling. And that feeling is really hard to explain to people who are not guitar players, people who have not sat in front of a tube amp and really can hear those subtle differences. And more than hear, for me, it's to feel it, to feel that subtle difference. The Kemper and the Iridium have done that. And I realize there's other ones out there. People will say the HX Stomp preceded the Iridium. You've got the Tone X. You've got lots of companies, Fender. They're all coming out with very decent modelers by today's standards. But the Iridium for me was the first mass market one, and the simplicity, I can't state that enough, the simplicity of the Iridium and its controls. I think that's why so many people took to the Iridium so quickly. When you had the HX Stomp, you were buried in menus trying to get those sounds. I like the simplicity. I don't like having to go in and monkey with everything to get all of those minute details to some exact perfection. I like to dial up an amp, dial up an impulse response or cabinet selection, and then run with it. The Iridium, in case you don't know, has 3 amps that it specializes on: the Fender, the Vox, and the Marshall. And my favorite amps to play on it, obviously you've got the Fender Deluxe, which I use a lot, the Fender Blues Jr., which is one of my all-time favorite combo amps, and then the AC30. I think those are, for me, those are the 3 that I dial up the most. You have a lot of guys who love the sound of Marshall. You have a lot of guys who like the Mesa Boogie sound, which is also one of the selectors that you can grab off the Vox setting. But just to grab that amp and then have the very simplistic volume drive and EQ, I think that's why the Iridium is loved by so many, and probably why it's disliked by others. Many of you know Alan, a good friend of mine. He started out using the Iridiums when he started getting rid of using his amps live, but he has since moved to Kempers, and he told me straight up, I wanted the Kempers because I wanted to monkey with that sound a little bit more and to go deeper into the settings, which the Iridium wouldn't allow him to do. That's exactly the reason I don't want to use Kempers. I want to quickly grab up my amp tones with the Iridium, and then I do all of my tone shaping using pedals. And that's just the way I've always operated, and that's the way I'll continue to operate for now. I remember letting Greg Mitchell use one of my Iridiums when we played live together, and him instantly having that same feeling where you could just tell, man, this thing sounds outrageous.
I love it because it sounds to me even as close to a real amp as you're possibly going to get. The impulse responses on this thing are just amazing. I've used everything from Marshalls to Voxes to Fenders to Mesas, and this just sounds like a real amp. To me, just the sound of it all around is one of the best pedals out there to give you that thing. I know there's more that cost like 3 times as much or even less, but to me, even running through like direct boxes with the XT Lives and all the Line 6 stuff when it first came out, Strymon has really captured the way an amp really sounds, and I just love it to death. It has changed from going from using live amps to where you have to mic it or put it behind a door or off the stage or somewhere, to just having one line or two lines if you're on stereo, just right on stage, right into a DI. That just makes it extremely versatile for me, and I don't have to lug around, a heavy 60-pound amp anymore. So my thought is, if you're looking for something to eliminate amps, the Strymon Iridium is the way to go. So,
as far as improvements to the Iridium goes and what I'm looking forward to the future, I would love to see a bigger version that maybe has 6 or 8 different amp models, so you could have a few more amp options. I have not missed lugging massive amplifiers and combo amps around in the 3+ years that I've used the Iridium. I don't see myself ever going back to amps. There's some that would say, well, right now it's a fad, and at some point everybody's going to want to start using real amps again, and then at that point you're going to see people just stop using modelers and go back to using real amps because it's popular. No, I want something that sounds like a real amp, and something that's really easy to use, and something that's really small, so that I can cut down on how much gear I'm actually taking with me. And that's been true across the board. I'm going to do another video in the future talking about my live sound setup. And years ago I sold most of my really big items, and I'm taking really small packs to all of my shows now, because the technology has gotten so good when it comes to live sound reinforcement and things like the Iridium, that's allowed musicians to travel in SUVs and trucks instead of hauling massive trailers like we used to have to do. I don't see myself going back to that. So will I ever sell my combo amps? No. For me, it's nostalgia. I love playing through the combo amps here in my studio, playing with pedals on the combo amps. It's just a lot of fun when you're by yourself in the room. But as far as recording for YouTube, recording albums, will I ever be miking those amps up and taking them through my amazing set of preamps and my really amazing microphones? No. It's too consistent to use the Iridium. I can have the Iridium set up and be getting guitar tracks laid down in mere minutes versus taking 20-30 minutes to mic up an amp, dial it in, and get it ready to go. By that time, a lot of times my creativity is already gone. So, have you found a guitar modeler that you really like putting your guitar through? Let me know in the comments. If you like the video, hit that thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't done so. We'll see you on the next video.